Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Sharice Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. Today, I am excited to have Beate Chelette, and she has a story for you from being a single mom and deeply in debt, which I'll let her tell that story, to being able to sell her business to Bill Gates in a recession. So without further ado, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
All right, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much. And to all my moms out there, shout out. If anybody can do it, it's you. So buckle up. It's going to be a wild and fast ride. So my name is Beate Chelette. I'm known as a growth architect. I work in Los Angeles as a business consultant, but I don't really like that word so much. So I really architect growth strategies. I have a soft spot for moms, mompreneurs, for anyone who is out there to make a good life for themselves and needs the shortcuts, because who needs the drama?
Right. Drama is not fun, and we don't need it. That's for sure.
I think we already have enough if we have children.
So how did you go from being in debt to building this business that you then sold? And what was the business?
Yeah, so the business was a stock photography syndication. So my original background is in photography, and I think I was an okay photographer. I wasn't as good as other people were. And so I realized quite quickly that I was better at the business side and not so much at the artistic side. And it kind of came just easy to me. I was a photo editor at Elle magazine, and then I immigrated to the United States. That has a lot to do with my personal abuse and the trauma from my childhood. You know, I have a very abusive mother, and really needing to go as far away on the other side of the world as I possibly can. And when I was at Elle magazine, I realized pretty quickly that I was in a position of power, and people will do and say anything to get an advantage, but this had nothing to do with me. It was all about the job, and I did not like that. So I wanted to figure out who I was on my own against all of this other stuff. And that's when I left and went to the United States. I became a business owner by accident in a massive recession. I had a 6 months old baby. My marriage is going down the drain. I get laid off, and we have one disaster after another. And so now I'm in this wild ride of being really unemployable with a small child, going through a really nasty divorce with an alcoholic and a pathological liar, which I just didn't even hadn't even figured out I was this naive. And I'm going deep, 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 deep into debt, trying to figure out how I'm gonna make this. And I find that my employee got a little too close to one of my key vendors. Really, I got to like $1 million, a decade of just hardship. And I'm like, okay, I finally got it figured out. I'm running a $1 million business. I'm in the 4%. I got it going on. Things are great. And I couldn't shake this feeling something was going on behind my back. And I fired my assistant, and I fired her too late. So she had come up with a plan to run my business with my key vendor, which was my business without me. And because I don't know any better, Sharice, I sued them. And now I'm in this massive lawsuit for what seems to be forever, for a year. And just as I think, okay, I'm going deep into debt in this lawsuit, there's a silver lining on the horizon, because the production season is coming. It's doing a lot of photography production for people coming from all over the world to the United States, to Los Angeles, Mercedes-Benz, Levi Strauss, Wrangler. I mean, great companies. And I have $500,000 worth on the books, and then September 11th comes. And it's over in 24 hours. Like literally, it was done. Usually when you lose a business, there's signs, and there was nothing. The planes hit the World Trade Center. My production business was gone. I mean, everybody canceled and they never came back. And then by the time they were ready to come back, I had lost so much that it just wasn't even worth rebuilding. And the lawsuit settles, and it's like nothing. Like literally, it was all said and done, paid. I had nothing. So now I'm having this idea for the stock photography syndication. As a former photo editor of Elle magazine, I used to buy these stories of celebrities, hanging around their pool and in their homes. And now the photographers that I had represented, because I was in the architecture interior world, would bring me these stories. So next thing I know, I get Madonna, Francis Ford Coppola, Julianne Moore, Simon Baker, and all these hotshot home stories. And my photographer said, "Hey, do you know how to sell these?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I was an editor at Elle Magazine. I used to buy these. Of course, I know how to sell them." So I built up a whole syndication network all over the world, and I licensed these stories into 79 countries. And that is when I'm now running up the spiral staircase in basically 4-inch stilettos as fast as I can, right? With my baby strapped to my back. And I'm going like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. But I have to pay so much money for all these, digitizations and building these databases and the CRMs and the data management systems. I'm going like, I don't think I'm going to make it. And I'm $130,000 in debt. Now I'm going like it's getting dicey here, everyone. There is no plan B here. There's only one plan. This is the plan. There's no other plan. Fly to Germany. My dad has a stroke. My father didn't have a stroke, Cherise. My father had pancreatic cancer.
Oh my God.
And so in 6 weeks, my biggest fan, number one supporter, cheerleader is dead. Now I'm thinking, all right, this is not good. This is really not good. And I have to come back here. I fly back to Germany. I have no money. I don't even know how I'm going to pay for the funeral. And we buried my dad. My office calls me and they tell me that we've just been served a notice and I'm losing the house.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm sitting there and I fell on my knees, talk about defining moments. And the reason I tell this story is for everybody to really understand that sometimes it really is darkest before dawn. So now I'm at the grave. I fall to my knees. I raise my fist and I yell at God, like literally, there's me, the funeral is over. It's a miserable cold day in Germany. And I'm there on my knees and I yell at God and I said, if you have a plan. Now, this would be a great time to fill me in because I just couldn't fathom. I couldn't fathom that after all of this, the answer to everything was, nah, 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 nah. The joke's on me. I said that I couldn't comprehend that. And I really want, if you listen to this podcast, I really want you to think about this because this is really the defining moment here for everyone in these really tough, hard breakthrough journeys of where you are pushing through your personal set point. You surrender. You say, you got to take over because I've done everything. I've called everyone. I've done what I could. I traveled. I spent the money I didn't have. I spent more money off money I didn't have. I'm borrowing money to pay interest on borrowed money. I'm in a death spiral here. This is it. This is done. I come back, and not too long after that, I get a letter from the White House, from the President of the United States. Now, you think about why would she get a letter from the White House? Well, the answer to that is because in my absolute desperation, and because my former mother-in-law was an absolute nag about it, I wrote a letter. And she had said to me, and again, this is a big learning here for everyone, you don't know where the solution is coming from. So you need to be open. That's when they say lean into the yes. Mm-hmm. And so she would say, write the letter to the President of the United States. He's the number one guy in the country. Why are you wasting your time with writing to anybody else? Why don't you just go straight to the top? And it was so idiotic. Right? So idiotic. I'm going like, fine, I'm going to write the letter just so we don't have to talk about this anymore. So imagine my surprise when I get a letter from the White House. And it put me in touch with a small business administration that helped me find a bank that restructured my debt, that freed up my line of credit, that got me to break even 3 months later. This is how close we were between bankruptcy, complete failure, and break even. 3 months.
Wow.
3 months later, I'm break even. 18 months later, I'm the leader in the world in this category of at-home stories. Licensing everywhere. Now the Bill Gates company comes and says, hey, can you teach us how you do it? And I said, you want it, you buy it. I mean, any decent woman will say that, right? I'm not telling you anything unless you give me money. And they say, how much do you want? I said, I want a couple million. And they said, fine. And so after the worst moment of my life, 18 months later, I sold my business for millions of dollars to Bill Gates.
Congratulations. But that was
Thank you.
definitely a fight.
Oh my gosh. I mean, was this like ever, I mean, an epic battle?
Mhm. And I think, there's some things that you could take from that because first of all, you listened to your intuition. A little late, you said, but
Yeah.
you knew something was wrong with your assistant. And I think kudos to you for hiring because there's a lot of solopreneurs that they don't trust people and that's why they're afraid to hire for that reason that you went through. But then you followed your intuition. The second thing is some people sometimes they see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And so it could be a mother-in-law that nags you and
Who
nags.
knew?
I know. Tells you to write a letter to the president. And I think it's fine, I'll do that. And sometimes it's these little things that just seem so out there and far-fetched, like would never happen or could never happen. And you just shoot for the moon and it worked. And so I think that with people, like what's between our ears can just stop everything. And if we can get away from that and realize that the sky's the limit, that it is possible. And so hearing a story like yours was so inspirational. First of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through everything that you've gone through, but you're a fighter. And I love to see the people that just keep fighting and they don't give up. I was running a 5K training for this marathon and several months ago. I was going fine and the race person said, if I were you, I'd just book it as much as you can until you turn around. And I didn't understand what he was talking about. So I didn't go as far as I could have. But as soon as I turn around, I'm hit with 50-mile-an-hour winds. And I'm just like, oh, it was only a mile and a half. It wasn't that big of a deal, but that was the longest mile and a half ever. And sometimes I started thinking about that this is life, that sometimes things can go really, really well, but then you turn around and it doesn't matter how much you do or how much you say or how much you try, you just keep facing this storm. And eventually you get to the finish line and it worked for you. So
100%. And you said a couple of things I want to tie back into. So I think this has a lot to do with your personal set point. I think about this a lot these days. And a personal set point is a term often used in psychology where we are comfortable to go up to a certain point and then it gets uncomfortable and then we stop, right? So if you have a personal set point, it could be a financial set point. You might get up to $50,000, you might get up to $100,000, but then something happens, you go back down to 80 and then you go back up to 100, but you never really get to 250. There's a set point. If you are running a marathon and you do your 5Ks, but you never get to the 10K, that's a set point, right? If you give up or if you can't push through something at a certain point, that's a personal set point. These personal set points are designed for us to stay safe. That's our subconscious. That's there's a great quote that I saw in a Formula One documentary, and it says, "The athlete is the mind, the body is the vehicle." And I thought that was so powerful. So you have to always remind yourself that your set point gets you to where you are today. That's it. That's the set point. And if you stay at the set point and you kind of at this point up and down a little bit, you staying at that set point. For you to do a quantum leap or to break through that, you have to move the set point. For you to move the set point, you're going to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to do things that are scaring. They're scaring you more than anything's ever scared you. Hiring other people. That's very easily solved. Don't hire one assistant, hire 5 people that work for you for 2 hours a week. So you get your 10 hours with subject matter experts, not one person who works for 10 hours. That way your business is safe. If somebody falls off, all you have to do is replace that person. You don't have to replace everything. So that's very easily solved. So you can move your set points by making the conscious decision, but you have to have this awareness that there is an actual set point. And I think that a lot of times, specifically for mothers, and I'm gonna say this out loud, we have been trained to make sure that everybody else comes before us. That is the sacrifice the mother makes. We sacrifice how our bodies look and feel because we push those beautiful babies out. And then we'll never regain the status of what our body was like before. And then we pay the consequences. And then, you never lost your baby fat and you're not as hot as you used to be. And your bust is not as pretty as it used to be. You have cellulite, you have stretch marks, you have all kinds of things. And then people kind of make it sound like it's something you did. You're like, I didn't do that. The little one did that to my body. But we carry that graciously and because we are. But there's a piece in our head where this sacrifice idea is so ingrained in women that we constantly sacrifice ourselves even when it's really not necessary. I have come to the conclusion, and this is a little bit of a branding idea I've been working with Cherise. So I have a 31-year-old daughter, and my daughter has a daughter. So I'm officially a grandparent. And that ages me like dramatically. And so I'm going like, well, that in itself is wrong to call me a grandmother. I mean, but maybe that's what the grandma looks like. Well, I mean, that is the life. So what matters now? So there's this moment where my daughter comes and visits, and her daughter, she nurses her daughter. Kayliana falls asleep. And then she says, Mom, can you bring her in the crib? I'm like, no, I want to hold her for a little bit and just watch her sleep. And so I hold her, I watch her sleep, and I'm in this moment, and literally nothing mattered. Nothing. I didn't want to be anywhere. I didn't have to make any phone calls. I wasn't worried about money. I wasn't worried about the next job, about sales. I was so in this moment. And I thought to myself, I'm a grandparent. I get to hang out with my grandchild. My daughter talks to me. Hooray. I live in a beautiful house. I live in the Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles. I have money in the bank. I still feel and look good. So literally, isn't this representing the point we all strive to get to? Is it not now the moment to recognize that I made the mistake so I can share the shortcuts on what it takes to have this moment and be in this moment? And then subsequently, what matters now and what doesn't matter. And that to me has become such a powerful part of what I do now that I feel I want to shout it from the rooftop. There is no there.
Yeah.
There is no there. You heard it here first. There is no there. There is no there for you to get to. There's only here. And you better make that journey a series of here moments so that when you get there, you actually didn't blow up your life in the process.
Yeah. So many good things that you just said. And it led me to, there's a movie that my kids and I were watching. My daughter put it on, something about the sea. It was Trudy Etterly. She's 1926. She was the first woman to swim the English Channel. She was 19 years old. Her first attempt didn't work because her coach, who also tried to swim the English Channel, failed. And so he drugged her, put some stuff in her tea, and she fell asleep the first attempt. Her second attempt, she was 19 years old, and it took her, I think she finished in 2 hours less than the 5 guys who did it before her. And so there's so many things that you could take from that. I have this habit where if I watch something and I learn about someone, I have to learn everything about that person. And so I started researching, and it said that, first of all, she lost her hearing after that. But second of all, what happened was, I forgot his name. He flew the Atlantic Ocean the next year. And so they said that she was basically a relic. What she accomplished was trumped because he was able to fly from, one side of the Atlantic to the other. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, yes, he flew, but that doesn't take any physical strength. I mean, like it did with her. And so I think that with you, where you were in that moment with your grandchild, just enjoying the here and now. And so many times I think people think, well, when I get to this point, then I'll be happy. When this happens, then I'll be okay. When this happens, this will be okay. And that's just, you have to enjoy the journey, because if you don't, then what are you living your life for?
You're burned out, you're miserable. The litmus test is if you think your children are in the way of you working more, that's your litmus test. Then there's something off. And it takes time to get to this point, and it takes experience. And it's been interesting because, my grandchild is going to be one next week at the time of this recording, and I am really recognizing on what a massive change that has done in my life. And just I honestly, I think this is also part of it. There has to be an honesty to say, what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
And yes, there can be a struggle to get to that point. Most likely there is, because remember, we have set points. So you have to push through the set points to get to whatever it is that you're desiring. That requires that, otherwise everybody would be doing it and they're not. But there is this moment where you say, that was a really good moment. Can I pause here?
Mhm.
Can I pause and lean into this moment and enjoy these like 5 minutes where I just hold her and I just stare at her and think how unbelievably blessed and amazing and wonderful my life is.
And I appreciate that. And I think there's a picture that I took. I'm one of those weirdos, I guess, where I knew the sex of my baby for years before I had them. And there was an 8-year gap because I went through a divorce, but I knew that I was supposed to have this girl, Melissa. She's my number 5. And it was like, there was one day where I was holding her, like you said, and she had her head arched and she just stared at me. And it was probably 30 minutes. We were just staring at each other and I took a picture of it. And it's those moments, you're right. It's like you work so hard to have them come to this earth, and then what, so that you can ignore them and go and do something. And that's why I started this podcast, because I want people, and specifically women, to understand that you can have a business, but your family, how do you juggle that? And sometimes, yes, you have to spend more time on your business. My husband just lost his job. So it's like, okay, well, I got to like gear it up again.
Showtime, yes.
Yeah. Because I took some time off because he was supporting it. So it's like, okay, but it's still making sure that, well, I'm not going to work past this time, and still have your boundaries so that you still be with your family. Or they're in the middle of summer, so maybe I take some time off and go do something with them, and then I can, there's different things, but that's the joy of being a mompreneur, because you can set your schedule around those activities and time.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I like this a lot. I like this conversation a lot.
Mhm.
I think it's important to point out these things that, and then they go away.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they come back, and then they have children, and then suddenly they wonder how you did it all.
Right. That's when you become the saint to them. Like, because with my mom, I think I had a better relationship with my dad growing up than my mom. And that must have been really hard, because I look back now, holy cow, how did that woman do everything that she did? When I say that woman, my mom, I love her dearly. I think that she walks on water more than I ever did before. And so it's like, well, you just have to be patient. Hopefully that they'll realize all the sacrifices you made. And if they don't, that's fine, but you did it because you love them.
100%.
So hard. So you have what's called the 5-star success blueprint. Can you expand a little more on that?
Yeah, so the five-star success blueprint is a very simple method that I've developed to help business owners that are building a business to figure out where the issues are and what comes in order, what the steps are and what the steps are in order and how to follow them. So on the first, it is the idea. The idea always comes first. What is it that you're doing? Who are you doing it for? Who is your ideal client, and what is their problem? That gets you to the second star in the 5-star success blueprint, which is the offer. So the offer has to solve the problem that you discovered in the first step. It has to be directly solving that problem. Why are you solving this problem? How are you solving this problem? And why are you the right person to solve this problem? That's the credibility piece that needs to go in this particular element. Once you've done that, you go to number 3, and that is systems. Only when you know who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, who your avatar is, what the problem is, what the offer is that you're solving, and how you're solving it with your product or service, only then are you building systems, because then you know what you need to build to deliver that offer to solve the problem.
Right.
Only when you've done that, that's when you hire. Now you go to number 4, which is the team. You need to first build the systems before you hire the people that operate the systems that manages the offer that solves the problem for the client. And then you look at yourself as a leader, and then you ask yourself, who do I need to be to lead this team that operates those systems that manages my offer that solves my client's problem?
That is probably the most beautiful, in a nutshell type explanation I have heard from anyone. And I'm including the big dogs that are in the market that I'm not going to name, because they tell you to go spend $25,000 and they don't ever package it that succinct. So kudos to you. There are so many steps in each one of those levels, but still, the way that you just put it in a nutshell was beautiful.
Yeah, it's the line, and for anybody interested in that, we have that available. It's one of our low entry products is at 5starsuccessblueprint.com if you want to check it out. But I've also done a lot of stuff on social media around this. But I wanted everyone to have a red line, and say, okay, I don't even know what I'm missing. I don't even know if I'm doing this in the right order. And if you're asking yourself that the answer is yes, you're probably missing something, and yes, you're probably doing it in the wrong order. Otherwise, you wouldn't ask yourself that question.
Right.
But it always bothers me when I hear people articulate this being so complicated and so difficult and so unique, and only their problem can help you. It's all not true.
Yeah.
It's 5 things in order. Follow that in order. You save yourself all this money, and you got to get the business model figured out before you buy all this other internet marketing stuff, because they are designing this for you to buy more through the affiliate offers that are coming in after you bought that thing.
Mm-hmm.
You need the offer. You need your thing figured out first, so you know what of these other offers or ideas that other marketers do fit into your overall plan. So if your offer is delivered, if one of your systems is lead generation via speaking, by all means, go buy a course on how to speak, right? And then buy a course on how to get your leads figured out that you convert from your speaking engagements, or do what we do, learn how to podcast and then use podcasting for lead generation. That all fits in there. But I have learned, again, shortcuts. If I'm doing a FaceTime, it'll be with my granddaughter. So make sure you follow the steps before you buy anything. It saves you time and money.
That's great. Such good advice. And I mean, such experience as well.
Yes, lots of it. 40 years of it.
And that's something that really is important, because if you're talking to somebody that hasn't done something like that,
What they know.
exactly. And it's clueless. So it's important. All right. So if gonna switch gears again for a second. If you were sitting down on a park bench and you saw someone like your daughter who was pregnant for the very first time that came and sat down next to you, what advice at any stage, because you've had it all now, at any stage of that motherhood process, what advice would you give her now?
I probably would tell her to get really clear on what it is that she wants, because the reality of it is your kids are loners. It's an 18-year lease, more or less, and then the lease is up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you may get a renewal on the lease, but you're not getting full features on the models, right? So you can't look at your child as your be all end all objective, because they're loners. So you have to make sure that whatever it is that you're mapping out for yourself in motherhood or in mompreneurship, that there is a piece that's for you, because if not, you're going to crash at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing I would say. What matters to you here is like, why are you the mother? Are you a mother because it's going to give you something that you didn't have?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be an issue. Or are you going to be a mother because this is, part of an experience that you feel called to have? I think those are 2 very different things. And I see a lot of the trauma that a lot of us women have from our crazy moms, of which I had one or have one.
Yeah.
Their trauma and what they didn't get from their crazy moms, projected on us, and then we have children and believe that our children are going to give us what we didn't get, and then we just perpetuate this trauma forever and ever and ever. That's probably a really big thing. I would encourage anyone to look into this, in this, again, self-awareness of, what am I doing it for? Am I trying to get something that I don't have? Or am I filling a need that I didn't get filled before? Or am I at 100% and I use this experience to, experience more things to make this experience another 100% within that 100%, right? So there's nothing missing. It's a rich experience to get started with. That's because I think that'll stop a lot of trauma along the way, and a lot of pain for a lot of women and the children, and a lot of probably therapy hours and expense along the line. And the second thing I would say is really make a conscious attempt to accumulate here moments consciously. This is a moment. This is a moment. And you make a marker. It's a moment. So you have a bucket full of moments, because in spiritual mindset and in success, we know that the more energy vibration you have on this perfection of the moment, of these moments together, the more successful you will be, because you're vibrating in this perfection, in this gratitude, in this moment, right? So accumulate as many as you can. The third thing I would say is just stay away from people that talk nonsense, that tell you it can't be done or it's too difficult. I asked 3 questions. Is anybody out there doing it? Is it possible? The answer is always yes. Yeah. Fine. So if anybody else is doing it, it's possible. It must be possible for you. Mm-hmm. The answer is yes. Then the third question shifts not to can I, but how can I? So that is a reframing in your head that you constantly have to make. Clean thinking is key for success.
That's fantastic. Great advice. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So if our listeners wanted to get a hold of you, how do they find you?
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend you all to check out, because we talked about the 5-Star Success Blueprint at 5starsuccessblueprint.com. You can find me anywhere on social media, but I have a free quiz that's under whatsyourtalentworth.com. Just make sure it's HTTP. For some reason, the S does not work. So it's whatsyourtalentworth.com. It's a 2-minute quiz where I'll take you through a formula that I created, the profit formula, that will tell you what your earning potential is with your skill in this market. And it's remarkably accurate.
That is fantastic. I'm going to actually go take that right now.
Yeah, please do. I can't wait to see the number.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You have just have so much phenomenal advice that I know that our listeners could use. And so moms, specifically mompreneurs, if you are listening to this episode, I hope that you have taken some golden nuggets showing that she went from so much
adversity, yes,
and adversity and opposition, and she was able to build something that has just been able to be so successful. Now she's able to help women like you that are looking to grow their business as well. So thank you for being on.
Sure. And while we're at it, please, wherever you're listening to this podcast, will you do Cherise a favor and go there right now and give her a 5-star review, subscribe, and please share this episode. I know all moms know all other moms. Share this episode maybe with 2 or 3 of your friends that really need to hear what we were talking about today. It is a labor of love. Give Cherise some love back.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Cherise Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Cherise Walker.